Hi, this is StrategyCast, where smart marketers and bold business thinkers share the plays behind brand breakthroughs. I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications. In this episode, we're diving into what it really takes to market the unknown. That includes everything from space technology to breakthrough ideas and early-stage innovation. My guest is Kim Jennett, one of the only 5 marketers to have successfully launched a rocket to orbit. We'll unpack the must-have pillars behind founder-led positioning. We'll explore why authenticity matters more than charisma. We'll also look at how to lead with transparency when your product doesn't yet exist, and what it takes to build credibility in markets that haven't caught up yet.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, we're just really going to dive into some crazy things today. Marketing the unknown is such a sweet, sweet topic. Before we get there, take us back to 2016. What drew you into the commercial space industry, and what did it look like then?
Yeah, so that was it's kind of a funny ride into orbit that I've taken, and it came from being part of my very early career. I was in the .com era of designing and developing websites and new brands and also for brick and mortars of websites. So I was there during that entire boom to bust.
Yeah,
and
very
beyond,
cool.
right? And then I went to work for several SaaS companies before they were called SaaS. I think it was called something else at that time. And then found myself back in the agency. So I was agency when I first was with doing websites and brands for during the .com era. And then I went back to agency, leading digital and brand marketing for Seas Candy, West Marine, and Visa International for their Visa checkout. And so while I was there, I was having a good time. I loved my job. And this guy called me and it recruited me in a way that I couldn't say no. He was talking about the fact that we were going to see a new emergence, that satellites were going to talk to each other, that today, back then, there was no way for satellites to beam any kind of information other than down to the ground, and it couldn't be smart about it. I understood that kind of technology, and I didn't know anything about space, to be quite honest, other than the fact that, it's cool. And he convinced me that what he was really looking for was somebody that would come in, not from Lockheed Martin, not from one of the primes, because there was no marketers that were doing this at the time, and just help him tell this story. I reluctantly went to this company because my boss at the time told me, this is going to be the biggest mistake of your life. Don't you, you are doing something that's really incredible and the clients love you. Please don't go.
Yeah.
I did go. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
And look at you now.
Yes, I absolutely fell in love with, I caught the bug, whatever you want to call it. All of us get imprinted at some point, and we don't leave the space community if we can.
Well, we got the bug at about that time as well, and have worked on several like tier 2 products and brands and companies. And I tell you, it's fascinating. And I think what's so fun about marketing something so complex regarding the unknown is the science behind what it truly takes to create interest. Inherently, something like that, I think, is interesting, but creating interest is very different than something that is interesting. And I think that is what is so special about a lot of these early stage innovative products. Sustainability has a lot of, like the EV battery. I mean, all these sort of things that are in that space, no pun intended, right now, I think really create special marketing minds. And speaking of that, you are one of only 5 marketers to launch a rocket to orbit. What did that campaign entail? What did it feel like?
Yeah, and I hate I had forgotten when I did tell you that it was 5, but it's actually 6 because I forgot about Blue Origin. So now it's 6 of us that got to take our company to their first orbit.
Right.
It was really cathartic for me personally. So just from the personal angle, I actually was at 2 launch companies. The first launch company, unfortunately, never made it to orbit. We were sold off to Lockheed Martin in parts. And so my second rocket company, which was Firefly, that was a cathartic moment for me. There was probably a handful of folks that I knew from my old company Vector that were there. So we were all doing the same thing. We were chasing orbit and
Right.
being part of a company that where you're seeing people that have been there before you. There was, they had been at this for a really long time. They're a scrappy bunch, and I fit in really well to
Yeah.
that mentality. So there's a lot to it though. Marketing is more than throwing the party, especially when you're dealing with all the different pieces of that and bringing everybody into the same. They'd never done this either, right? So I was their first marketing hire. They didn't even know what I was there for and how I could help them. So I
Right.
think there's a lot of pieces that go along with that. And it's working with the range, meaning Space Force, where you're launching from. It's working with we had customers, we had NASA, and we had our dream launch that there were student projects. We had all of our techs and the people that had been there sweating through this, working nights, working weekends to get to this moment. And our first launch that I was there for, we didn't make it to orbit. And that was disappointing, but it was a way for us to pick ourselves back up by our literal boots and keep going. So our second launch that we did was successful, 100% mission success, is what I was live tweeting at the time.
Yeah.
So there's so many hats that I had to wear. There was the VIP party and launch viewing. There's working with the range on the communication side. There's crisis communications involved. There's the buildup and along the way of getting people to be excited and follow your ride. There's working with the talent that was doing the broadcast for us, writing the run of show, doing all the videos for the behind the scenes.
A lot going on. Yeah.
It was a lot to do to get to where we were. But at the end of the day, being on comms at the NASA building and watching it go to orbit, I still get a little bit misty over it.
Yeah, it really is quite an experience. And you mentioned all of those outputs, but really where it starts is the right market position and the right messaging that follows suit with that. You've got 5 pillars of founder-led positioning that we're going to chat through quickly. Don't lie, be authentic, prioritize transparency, give people something to cheer for, and make the whole team part of the mission. So you and I have talked about these in advance of our conversation today. Let's start with don't lie. Why is that the first?
Yeah, I think that's first and foremost. And I learned that the hard way, by the way. You always, as a PR marketer, if you've ever been through that, where you may have been at a company that was not telling the truth and you didn't know, that's your reputation too.
It is.
So that's a really important one for me. And I do sit down with founders and let them know that that's a no-go for me at this point in my career.
And I think asking the right questions to make sure, especially if it's a tech situation where you may not be as well versed or understand it as well as the scientists, the engineers developing it.
Yeah.
Understanding the right questions to ask to make sure that it is ready, that you are ready to launch that product, I think very, very important place to start.
Absolutely. And I also, founders, there are some founders that don't mean to specifically, they don't want to lie. They are they're so invested in their vision that they almost start believing things that aren't quite there yet. So
Well, and
it's just that, right? So being authentic is the second one, right?
yeah, and I think back to that point really quickly, the the emotion behind that founder and where they're taking the company, especially when they're going after investment, I think
Right.
that's where the truth can get, spread out a little bit. And it is our job as marketers, and especially in the PR realm here, to make sure that what we are putting out is factual. We had a situation several years ago where I'm not even going to name the company or the brand, but we were working on an innovation-led solution to a big need, launched the product at a international trade show, and in the very last minute, the hired CEO pulled out the third-party validation in the press release. And that to me should have been the aha moment. It wasn't. We made promises, and that's years ago. The product still is not in the market. We fired the client because of it. We fired them because they had lied to us. But that is how, I mean, you've got to add, this is such a big deal. And I
Mhm.
think for our agency, and everyone has a story out there regarding that. So just stay true to yourself. Know that if you are pushing something out you don't feel good about, it's probably too good to be true, which does tie into that authenticity piece that is so important.
Yes, exactly. And I think that a lot of times I've worked in the past, even before I went into Rockets, I remember working with a SaaS company, and they were trying so hard to make their CEO into something he wasn't.
Right.
They gave him a makeover, they brightened his teeth, they were giving him all this coaching, and at the end of the day, it just came off so flat
Yeah.
because he himself didn't believe him. All of a sudden, he's this new person, and that wasn't his true self. So I
Yeah.
learned back then, many years ago, when I came into this new world, that the best thing that you have is authenticity. So
Right.
whoever that person is, make them the best part of themselves. Obviously, give them the avenue, to tell their vision, their story. Every great product starts with an idea.
Right.
That's where you have to get to founders. You go to the founders and you say, "Tell me why you had to do this. Why
Mhm.
did you start this company?" I can tell you that I went to a company. I've worked for so many, so this will not be, I don't have to share the name, but I went to a company and I asked this question, and his answer was so flat that I couldn't believe in the company. There was no way for me to tell a story that he didn't believe in himself. The reason why he created a company can't be because I want to make money.
Yeah.
For me to I want to live, breathe. I'm a founder myself. I was part of something that I think was bigger than anything that ever happened, which was the internet boom. And the companies that I wanted to work with were the ones that had a story, the
Yeah.
ones that had history, the ones that were trying to create history. And I still believe that today. So that authenticity it doesn't take a charismatic leader to be charismatic. It just takes authenticity.
Well, and transparency as well, right? I mean, he was transparent with you. He was honest. He wanted to make money, but that is not marketable. So that is not why people are going to want to work for him either. So it
Exactly.
really sends out the wrong message in a big way. I think transparency, especially when you are working in an area and in product lines and innovation that can change with the snap of a finger. You mentioned early on that the first launch didn't happen, and being transparent about why it didn't happen and when the next launch was going to be is the way that you overcome, that kind of a situation.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And it happened. It just also happened all over Orchid and Vandenberg. So, and it was that those moments are something that you really learn from as a marketer as well. And PR, crisis communication. I like to say I have a PhD in crisis communication at this point. And I think that what really stands out for me when it comes to being transparent, there's a couple of companies that have done this very well. My company, former company, Firefly, landed perfectly on the moon and everything was great. And by the way, my name's on the moon, and I'm so excited about that. I will still every night I do kind of pinch myself, and I thank my team for honoring me by putting it on there. But there are other lander companies that didn't make it, and there's one in particular that I just applauded the entire time of their transparency and how they talk to the market, their investors, but generally to the public about what went wrong, how they're going to fix it. And the entire threads of story were so transparent that you couldn't help but want to lift them back up and prop them back in and maybe even invest in their next adventure.
What is your advice for brands that are trying to foster emotional buy-in on something that is futuristic, that is in development, that we think we can achieve, but we're not quite sure? We've got the right people at the table, we know, but it's this, pie in the sky, no pun intended, idea.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's not the tech that sells, it's what the tech's going to do for society, do for you personally. I'm a human to human marketer, and humans have needs. And
Right.
so once you can tell those stories that fill those needs and those desires, and I think that's where you have to go. So for example, I really felt strongly that we had to put the people first, especially after we had a failure of not achieving the perfect orbital. I mean, we went 2.5 minutes. It was not a bad first start for a company like a commercial launch company. But I think where I wanted to go from there was, all right, let's tell the story. And our founder and CEO at the time, we did a story with him first. We started with him. We showed the people around him working on how we were going to get learn from this and do better. And we started there, and then we started following the people and telling their stories and showcasing how we were making progress, what we were going to do next. One of the things that we had due to the founder was he liked to show, not tell. So if we weren't there yet, he didn't want to show it. And so we definitely were a milestone driven company but if something happened, we were going to show it. And so that's where I came in, to tell
Yeah,
that story along the way and to build fans, right? So that's how you build fans, is with not just a great logo, which I have to say that Firefly is one of the best logos in the space industries. It's not just the great logo, but it's the feeling that you have for the company. And the only way to give that is by telling really great stories.
Yeah, I completely agree. And a lot of that ties into the next segment that we're going to walk through and really connecting the dots between these pillars. And that's thought leadership. Thought leadership is one of the key areas for young companies in general, but especially companies that are selling, a vision of the future, something that isn't necessarily in development, or it's in development, but it's not developed yet.
Right.
It's like we're selling, again, pie in the sky. So that thought leadership strategy, I think, is something very, very important here. You mentioned that when you don't have a product, you must have thought leadership. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, thought leadership is the magnet that draws you to a company, right? So there's the why it matters. Why should I care about this? PR is simply just a megaphone.
Right.
It's thought leadership that's the magnet to the brand, and there's only it kind of goes back to the principles of don't lie, be authentic, and that bring that thought leadership to life. And it doesn't have to be one person. It doesn't have to be even people. It could be the product, the brand itself. The brand could have its own personality. So even a brand can be a thought leader, right?
I
So
think. Really, really interesting point. And a lot of companies look at, a live human being as the thought leader. You mentioned additional thought leaders. It doesn't necessarily always need to be the CEO. You can have several thought leaders within an industry or within a company. How have you deployed that sort of a go-to-market
Wide
strategy?
speaker bench. Yeah.
Yeah,
I believe strongly in a wide speaker bench. And some of it's quite frankly because of my background and how long I've been doing this and having lots and lots of CEOs come and go.
yeah,
So I've learned along the way that some of the best way to manage through those types of moments is to have more than
yeah.
one person speaking for the company. But I also do believe that I there's audiences. So maybe there's an audience for this personality, but there's another one over here. How I've deployed it in the past is you look for connections. What can this person speak to authoritatively, and who would he connect to that we're trying um, to get on board, right? So whether that be the government, and so we have somebody that speaks with authority there, somebody that really can hit that audience well. There's the technical audience. So, do you have your chief engineer? Is he willing to go on camera? All of those things. And I will say that one of the biggest challenges that we have as hard tech marketers, PR people, is when we come in, especially being the first, and I this like I'm now my fourth first marketer coming into a hard tech company
Great
that doesn't
position.
have a product.
Yeah,
And I think the biggest thing that we have to do as is build the trust ourselves. It all starts from here and then it resonates out.
yeah.
So some of my best spokespeople were the ones hiding from me for months before I could put a camera in front of them. They turned out to always be the best spokespeople. So I didn't look for the loudest person, not even the most charismatic. I looked for the one that truly had the passion once you ask the right questions to bring it out of them.
And I think that takes very, very smart people that can really think on their feet, and they innately, have this organic way of invigorating and exciting an audience without feeling as though they're on a pedestal or, they're a part of a show. I mean, it
Yeah.
takes a very special person to be able to really, meet that goal for the marketing team. You've done a lot of thought leadership in your career. What's your favorite example of thought leadership that you did with one of these, high risk categories that you've worked within?
Yeah, I think well, I have a couple. So I'll give one example. I was working with somebody who was such an introvert, and he really didn't want to be in the camp, but he knew he had to be. And um he had to overcome his fear of the camera. As soon as it came on, I'm not kidding you, it was hours and hours, weeks and weeks of preparation this man had already gotten before I even got there. And as soon as the camera came on, he just couldn't move.
Yeah.
He couldn't speak. He was frozen.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of come with your own methods for each one of these. And maybe it's just my way of working with founders. I don't just bring in a video crew. I am the producer. I will it's just me and you. We're just going to talk here. It's going to be fine. And this person really started to like being the thought leader because he gained, he got bigger in the seat as we kept talking. He understood the value in it because he was getting the feedback. He got put on boards that he hadn't gotten put on before. But the one I think that there are ways that we as marketers, it's our job. It's our job to make them thought leaders. They don't come to us as thought leaders. Some of them do. I mean, there's many, many, many folks right now that are amazing thought leaders for their companies, and they come ready to do that. But most of them don't, especially in this particular field that I'm in. And so
Yeah.
it's really our job to bring it out of them. And the only way to do that is through empathy, a lot of empathy, a lot of patience, and quite frankly, being bought in yourself. If you're not bought into this company, if you're not bought into the mission, if you're not brought into the vision, um, you shouldn't take the job.
There are a lot of people listening today that are in very, very similar situations where they are struggling to find that thought leader or a group of thought leaders within the organization because the founder, in most situations, admittedly, is not that right person. And we've touched on this just a little bit, but I'd like to get a bit more systematic, if you will, and provide some advice to our listeners on how they can find those individuals within their organization. And I think there's different types of thought leaders, right? There could be a product leader, there could be a brand leader, or like even a brand character. There
Mhm.
could be some very symbolic components of thought leadership that are that are tied very tightly to the brand essence of a company as well, that could become thought leaders. So when you're starting from ground zero, and thought leadership is the strategy, the president or the CEO or the founder is not the person, what advice do you have for our audience to build the strategy from within?
Well, I think that the first things first is it starts with the brand itself. So what's our brand promise? What's the brand vision? Then and only then can you build around a strategy for a thought leader.
Right.
So then who's your audience? Because who are you going to talk to? Who's going to be interested in what you have to say? What is interesting? So then you can build your bench around those moments as well. So and it doesn't have a thought leader, even when they're not there anymore, can still be a thought leader. I look at C's Candy, and Mary C's is still very much alive as far as being somebody that still talks for her brand. And what I mean by that is they're still talking about her old time candy. They have not moved away from Mary C's. Mary C's is very much a part of the brand still, and her story is continuing to be told,
Right.
right? So I think that there's even Firefly, the person that I worked with there is no longer the CEO, but the brand essence and the storytelling and the thought leadership that was started there is still continuing, right? So I think that it starts from really the brand promise, and it has to circle back to those moments.
Yeah. Is there a rule of thumb regarding the number of thought leaders a brand should have within an organization?
Well, I like to keep my bench. If you're going to have, you could definitely dilute a brand by having too many people speak at once. I'm working with a company right now where we have three, thought leaders, and each one of them come from it from a different place. So, maybe the CEO is talking more about the market and the what's available and how we're going to overcome that. Maybe you have the technology leader that's talking about what the applications are going to be and what we're going to see from that. And then you have the founder over here that's talking about why did they build this? What did they invent? And why does it matter to the world? So
Right.
those are three different voices that can talk very declaratively in their own lanes without diluting the brand, but actually propping it up.
Yeah. I think that is a really important point. And is there a rule of thumb regarding moments in time? So regarding when you implement all these different approaches, obviously based on strategic pillars, it all has to, roll back into that. What advice do you have for our listeners in that area?
Yeah, I think having the founders first is the best approach. So you can add more people as you go along. That was actually something I've done a couple of times where it was important to have that moment of who's speaking. But if you don't add others, you can end up with, I always like to look at it this way. Steve Jobs at Apple,
Yeah.
you know, when he left, Apple lost their voice. When he came back, the voice was back. You could say the same thing about SpaceX.
Yeah.
SpaceX doesn't have marketing. Yes, they do. They have Elon Musk as their marketer, their main marketer and their voice. But do they have other voices? I think that they've along the way have had engineers come up through the ranks to do that. And the same thing, but at the end of the day, if he's not at SpaceX anymore, do they lose their voice? Do they lose their brand? I
Well,
I, I don't know.
and I think in Elon Musk's situation, probably not. They don't have to worry about that because there's so much equity in the company themselves. But it is such a major discussion and concern for many, many smaller businesses out there. And that is, let's say we've got an engineering pillar and we want to be known as the go-to company when it comes to an engineering need for X product. And we've got two incredible engineering leads. Lifespan in the industry is 3 to 5 years. So we're going to prop the company up with this pillar surrounding engineering, knowing that ultimately that voice is going to leave probably 3 to 5 years. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is. And I think that the only way to really overcome that is by continuing to prop up more and more people.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was one thing that we did, I think, quite successfully at Firefly, and they've continued to do as we went along. And it's always interesting how companies that do continue down the singular voice, I've seen that not be successful long term.
It's interesting. You and I both are in roles within our own organizations, and with us, quite often it's for our clients as well, where we're constantly, with great gratitude, by the way, really helping not just younger marketers around us, but very, very smart marketers find their own path or their own position on where they can be very, very successful within their own organization. There's a lot of coaching. There's a lot of just wisdom that we share with these individuals. And it's something that you really pride yourself on within the organizations you work within, and not just your companies or clients, but also people within the industry. So you've taken on this role of coach to many people and taught them many things. What advice do you have for our audience today as they're navigating? I mean, you and I have been at this a long time, and inherently we have this, this innate respect because of the number of years we've been in business for those newbies to the table, trying to accomplish exactly what we can accomplish in one conversation just because of our experience. What advice do you have for them? And I think you've got a sweet story to tell as well.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I'll give one of the things that I like to tell folks is that making a mistake is not the end, by the way. You can overcome these things. And I have an anecdote I'll share in just a moment. But to answer your question, I think the best thing that we can do as more senior marketers, I mean, in the aerospace industry, I would be known as a graybeard in this industry because I've just been doing this for a really long time. There's two sides to this sword. One of them is it also makes us we have to be a little more thoughtful in the way that we come into an organization. I've learned this over time as well, as to help people come along to my thought process rather than just coming in and doing. I think that's really important for all of us to I tend to be a quiet marketer, meaning I don't go out there and tout myself all over the place, and you won't see me doing a lot of that. But I don't think that I would give that advice to marketers today. I think marketers today better take credit, better take it often, and better take their victory laps. And so that one I think resonates with me a lot. The other thing is to, you can take your job seriously without being too serious. People want to be around people that they like. People want to be around people that motivate and excite them. People want to be around people that can bring the passion to life. And that's really our job. As from what I've been able to do, I bring in the enthusiasm and let them know, no, this is an interesting story. There's so many technical people that don't understand how interesting their work is, that we have to go in and bring it out of them. So don't wait for a story to come to you, build the story. One of the things that I think that is interesting in our industry right now is I'm watching as journalists become marketers. For me personally, I'm a wannabe journalist that became that is a marketer. And so, you have to find your own stories. And the thing that I have brought with me from my old days is that we are the journalists within the organization. It is our job to tease out the stories. It's our job to find all the different strings to build together for a stronger spine to the company story. And so I think that being open to knowing every single person on the team and getting to know them personally. What do they like? What don't they like? Who are their friends? What do they read? All of those things. That's our job to navigate through, not for them to come to us. I think that's the biggest thing I would give to any marketer, especially going into something where it's hard tech, new tech, innovative tech, all of those things. You're working with folks that they too have been doing this and know what they're doing every day. They don't know that this is something that no one else knows. That's something outside of their field would not understand. And it's our job to tell that story. But the anecdote that I wanted to share with, if you fall down, you have to get back up, right? And so one of my early days, one of the clients that I wanted forever, and I did get, which was Levi Strauss. And I loved that company so much. I worked for them for years, did their websites. And very early on in my working with them, I made an error on a graphic. And it was 4 months later when I got a phone call while I was on my honeymoon that said to us, we have a slight problem on our global public affairs website, because in the graphic, it actually said global pubic affairs. So I literally made a graphic.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh.
And I will say they were not happy about it, but we continued and grew that client still. There are ways to overcome
about how you tackle the problem.
Yes. Yeah. I will say I double check everything now, but this is back in the day when you literally could not just go on a website. You had to recreate a graphic, and I'm on my honeymoon with my husband, and we had to live with that moment. And I think about it a lot. I bring back, because I can laugh about it today, but it took, I was literally curled up in a ball for about a day and a half after that. And you can overcome these things, right? So it's achievable to fall down and get back up.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it too. So, and we all make mistakes. It's just about how we do them. And instilling that, I think, with younger people is something very important. They feel they've got so much to prove out of the chute, and when they do make a mistake, they internalize it so much. So, teaching them, I always, to me, this is like the fine line, right? I don't mind mistakes at all. But when the same mistake is made 15 times, or you've got to remind something about it for the 15th time, whether it be an M dash, in a write up, and a company has a policy of no M dashes or whatever it might be, that's when I can get a little bit crunchy. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the big difference. Mistakes are fine. It's life. Everyone does them, everyone makes them, including the client. But that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a great CEO tell me, that when he hired me, he said, "I want you to blow things up here." And I said, "No, you really don't want me to do that." And you'll get that a lot from founders. They'll say, "I just want you to come in here and shake things up." They don't really mean that.
Yeah.
What they really mean is they want us to show them what they don't already know,
exactly.
and bring them along. But I think that the best advice he ever gave me was he just said, "You're going to fail. You will not be perfect at this. My only expectation is that you learn from that and don't do it again."
That's great. That's great leadership. So I've got one last question for you, and it's one that we ask all of our guests. We launched the Better At series a year ago to help marketers, oh my gosh, it's almost the end of 2025, to sharpen their everyday skills and really make a difference. A lot of what we're talking about right now with the peers and those people that don't have as much experience yet. Things like listening, collaborating, prioritizing, and communicating. What's one thing you've learned to be better at that's made a measurable difference in how you lead, work, and show up in your role?
Listen.
Yeah.
is probably the biggest thing. I used to come into organizations and literally say, everybody out of the way, I've got this.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unhelpful. The best thing you can do is come in, listen, understand, be empathetic. I would say that in my latter career, empathy and listening is my super skill at this point.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I tell you, Kim, it has been such a pleasure having you on StrategyCast today. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Well, they can follow me on LinkedIn. I hope that we just launched. I just helped launch Rendezvous Robotics, which is a new company that will be building the infrastructure of space. So follow Rendezvous Robotics story, because you're going to start seeing a lot of what I've been talking about here. I'm hoping to deploy there.
Well, that's going to be awesome. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, you can go ahead and reach me on LinkedIn, Lori Sartorius Jones there. Kim, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.